These songs were massive hits. Then their creators disappeared forever. What happened to the biggest one-hit wonders of the 60s will shock you. Deadly accidents, industry betrayals, and mysterious vanishing acts that destroyed legendary careers. The dark truth about why they never had another hit changes everything. Number 1. The Troggs, Wild Thing.
Wild thing. You make my heart sing.
Wild Thing exploded onto the scene in 1966, transforming 4 working-class guys from Hampshire into international superstars overnight. The song's primitive 3-chord structure and Reg Presley's raw, animalistic vocals created something that felt dangerous and rebellious. Radio stations couldn't stop playing it, and within months, the Troggs were performing on television shows across America and Europe. The track climbed to number 1 in multiple countries, selling over 5 million copies worldwide. Everything seemed perfect for the band that had captured the wild spirit of rock and roll in its purest form. But behind the scenes, lead singer Reg Presley was developing an obsession that would ultimately destroy everything they'd built. While his bandmates assumed their frontman was enjoying the typical rock star lifestyle, Presley was secretly pouring their earnings into paranormal research. He became convinced that crop circles contained hidden messages from extraterrestrial beings, and he started funding expensive expeditions to investigate UFO sightings across the countryside. His home filled with conspiracy books, alien artifacts, and detailed maps marking supposed spacecraft landing sites. The other band members had no idea their money was disappearing into what they'd later call complete madness. The situation reached a breaking point during their 1967 American tour. Presley showed up to recording sessions with notebooks full of alien encounter stories, insisting that their next album should include songs about intergalactic communication. Guitarist Chris Britton later revealed that Presley claimed he'd been contacted by beings from another dimension who were using popular music to send coded messages to humanity. The band was horrified when Presley suggested that Wild Thing itself contained hidden frequencies designed to prepare human consciousness for alien contact. Arguments became so heated that security had to separate band members during studio sessions. The revelation that followed would haunt the Troggs for decades. Presley announced he'd discovered that several major record labels were receiving guidance from otherworldly beings about which songs would influence human behavior most effectively. He claimed that Wild Thing had been chosen by these entities as a test to see how primitive, sexually charged music could affect social attitudes. According to Presley, the song's massive success proved that humans could be controlled through carefully crafted musical frequencies. His bandmates watched in horror as their frontman destroyed their career with claims that sounded like science fiction. But recent declassified government documents about mind control experiments in the 1960s suggest Presley might have stumbled onto something far more disturbing than anyone imagined. Number 2. The Kingsmen, Louie Louie. The FBI spent 2 years and thousands of taxpayer dollars investigating a garage rock song because parents across America were convinced it contained hidden obscenities. Louie Louie became the most controversial 3-chord song in history when rumors spread that lead singer Jack Ely was secretly singing dirty lyrics at a slurred, barely audible level. The panic reached such heights that the song was banned from radio stations nationwide, and angry parents demanded government intervention to protect their children from what they believed was musical corruption. What started as a simple cover of an old rhythm and blues track had somehow become a national crisis that would destroy the Kingsmen's chances of ever having another hit. The paranoia began almost immediately after the song's 1963 release, when teenagers started claiming they could hear sexual references hidden in Ely's mumbled vocals. High school students passed around handwritten copies of what they claimed were the real lyrics, each version more explicit than the last. Parents organized boycotts, religious leaders condemned the song from their pulpits, and radio programmers received bomb threats for playing it. The hysteria grew so intense that Indiana Governor Matthew Welsh actually banned the song from all state radio stations. The Kingsmen watched helplessly as their biggest hit became a symbol of moral decay, even though the actual lyrics were completely innocent. The FBI investigation that followed was both thorough and absurd. Federal agents analyzed the recording at different speeds, brought in audio experts, and even consulted with linguists to determine if obscene words were embedded in the track. The Bureau's final report concluded that the song was unintelligible at any speed, but this official clearance came too late to save the Kingsmen's reputation. By the time the FBI announced their findings, the band had already been blacklisted from major venues and television appearances. Record labels were terrified to work with them, and their follow-up singles received virtually no radio play because station owners feared another controversy. But the real tragedy emerged decades later when Jack Ely revealed the truth about his vocal performance. The singer admitted that his slurred delivery wasn't intentional. He'd been forced to sing while wearing dental braces, and the recording studio's ceiling was so low that he had to crane his neck awkwardly toward the microphone. His mumbled vocals were simply the result of physical discomfort and poor recording conditions, not some elaborate scheme to corrupt America's youth. The irony was devastating. A simple technical problem had triggered a moral panic that destroyed their career and launched one of the most ridiculous government investigations in American history. The Kingsmen had become casualties of their own accidental success, victims of a society so paranoid about rock music that they saw hidden dangers in a perfectly innocent song about a sailor missing his girlfriend. Number 3. Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs, Louie Louie. Sam the Sham thought he was just having fun when he recorded Louie Louie in 1965, but the song's massive success triggered a chain of events that would expose one of the music industry's darkest secrets. The track dominated radio stations nationwide, climbing to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and selling over 3 million copies. With its infectious uno, dos, one, two, tres, cuatro opening and Sam's wild vocal delivery, it seemed like the perfect party anthem that captured the carefree spirit of mid-60s rock. But behind the scenes, record executives were using the song's popularity to test something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. What Sam Domingo didn't know was that his record label had been secretly monitoring the psychological effects of repetitive musical phrases on teenage listeners. Louie Louie's hypnotic rhythm and nonsensical lyrics made it the perfect test subject for studying how certain sound patterns could influence behavior and purchasing decisions. Focus groups of teenagers were exposed to the song at different volumes and frequencies, while researchers measured their brain activity and recorded their responses to various consumer products. The results were so promising that major advertising agencies began incorporating the song's musical structure into commercial jingles, creating what industry insiders called sonic manipulation. The band started noticing strange patterns during their live performances. Audience members would become unusually agitated during certain parts of the song, and security reported an increase in aggressive behavior whenever Louie Louie was played at concerts. Sam began receiving disturbing fan mail from listeners who claimed the song was controlling their thoughts and making them do things they didn't want to do. When he brought these concerns to his record label, executives dismissed his worries and pressured him to record similar tracks with even more repetitive elements. The label's sudden interest in psychological research projects and their insistence on specific musical arrangements started making Sam suspicious about their true motives. The breaking point came when Sam discovered that his label had been sharing sales data and audience research with government agencies studying mass communication and social control. Documents later revealed that Louie Louie had been part of a broader experiment to determine how popular music could be weaponized to influence public opinion and consumer behavior. When Sam threatened to expose these activities, he found himself suddenly unable to get radio airplay for any new material. His follow-up singles were systematically ignored by the same stations that had made Louie Louie a massive hit. The message was clear. Artists who asked too many questions about the industry's hidden agenda would find their careers permanently sabotaged, regardless of their talent or previous success. Number 4. The McCoys. Hang on, Sloopy.
Hang on, Sloopy, Sloopy, hang on.
Rick Derringer was only 17 when Hang On Sloopy launched the McCoys to the top of the charts in 1965, but the song's success came with a terrifying price that nearly cost him his life. The track became an instant stadium anthem, adopted by Ohio State University as their unofficial fight song and played at sporting events across the country. Within months, the McCoys were touring nationally and appearing on television shows alongside established stars. Everything seemed perfect for the teenage musicians from Indiana who had captured lightning in a bottle with their energetic garage rock sound. But behind their sudden fame, A dangerous obsession was building that would turn their biggest fan into their worst nightmare. Dorothy Sloop, the real woman who inspired the song's title, had been following the McCoys' career with increasing intensity since their hit reached #1. What started as innocent fan appreciation quickly escalated into full-blown stalking behavior that terrorized the young band members. Sloop began showing up at their concerts uninvited, demanding to meet the musicians and claiming ownership over their success. She sent increasingly disturbing letters to their record label, describing elaborate fantasies about her relationship with Rick Derringer and threatening violence against anyone who tried to keep them apart. When security at venues started recognizing her as a potential threat, she became even more creative and dangerous in her pursuit of contact with the band. The situation reached a breaking point during a 1966 performance in Cleveland, when Sloop somehow gained backstage access and confronted Derringer in his dressing room. Witnesses later described a terrifying scene where the deranged fan produced a knife and threatened to kill herself and Derringer if he didn't agree to marry her immediately. Security guards had to physically restrain Sloop while she screamed about how the song proved they were destined to be together forever. The incident was hushed up by the record label, but it marked the beginning of a campaign of harassment that would follow the McCoys for years. Derringer later admitted that the success of Hang On Sloopy had made him afraid to perform in public, knowing that Sloop could be lurking in any crowd. The psychological damage from the stalking incident destroyed the McCoys' ability to capitalize on their hit single's success. Derringer developed severe anxiety about performing live, and the band's stage presence became noticeably more cautious and restricted. Their follow-up singles failed to capture the raw energy that had made Hang On Sloopy so compelling, partly because the musicians were constantly looking over their shoulders for signs of danger. When Dorothy Sloop was finally arrested for making death threats against other women she believed were romantically interested in Derringer, the damage to the band's career was already irreversible. The song that had made them famous had also created a living nightmare that prevented them from ever feeling safe enough to fully embrace their success again. Number 5, and the Mysterians, 96 Tears. The organ riff that opens 96 Tears is one of the most recognizable sounds in rock history, but the mystery surrounding the band that created it runs much deeper than their cryptic name suggests. When the song exploded to #1 in 1966, and the Mysterians became the first Latino rock band to dominate American charts. But their success was built on a foundation of lies that would eventually destroy them from within. Lead singer Rudy Martinez, who performed under the stage name had constructed an elaborate fictional identity that convinced fans and industry executives he was a supernatural being from another dimension. The deception worked perfectly until the truth emerged in the most devastating way possible. Martinez had convinced everyone around him that he possessed genuine psychic abilities and could communicate with spirits from beyond the grave. He claimed that 96 Tears had been channeled through him during a seance, and that the song's hypnotic power came from otherworldly forces guiding his performance. Record executives, desperate to market something unique in the competitive garage rock scene, encouraged these supernatural claims and built the band's entire promotional campaign around Martinez's alleged paranormal gifts. Fans began treating and the Mysterians concerts like religious experiences, believing they were witnessing genuine supernatural phenomena rather than just skilled musicianship. The elaborate hoax began unraveling when Martinez's own family members started coming forward with evidence that contradicted his mystical persona. His brother revealed that Rudy had been practicing magic tricks and studying mentalism techniques since childhood, learning how to create the illusion of psychic powers through simple psychological manipulation. Former girlfriends described finding books on cold reading and seance techniques hidden throughout his apartment, along with detailed notes on how to fake supernatural abilities for maximum impact. The revelation that their spiritual leader was just a skilled con artist devastated the band's fan base and destroyed their credibility with the music industry, ensuring they would never recover from their exposed deception. Number 6, Count 5, Psychotic Reaction.
Oh, little girl, psychotic reaction.
The distorted guitar riff that defined Psychotic Reaction in 1966 wasn't just revolutionary. It was literally driving teenagers insane, and the medical community was terrified. Within weeks of the song's release, Emergency rooms across California began reporting a disturbing trend of young patients arriving in states of extreme agitation after listening to Count Five's hit single. The track's feedback-heavy sound and relentless energy seemed to trigger violent episodes in susceptible listeners, leading several hospitals to document what they called rock and roll psychosis. When the band's lead guitarist, Ken Elner, learned that his innovative playing style was allegedly causing mental breakdowns, he was forced to make a choice between his artistic vision and public safety. Reports started flooding in from parents who claimed their teenagers became uncontrollably aggressive after playing the Psychotic reaction repeatedly. High school principals banned the song from school dances after multiple fights broke out whenever it was played, and several radio stations received complaints from listeners who described experiencing panic attacks and disorientation while hearing the track. Medical researchers at Stanford University launched a study examining the psychological effects of distorted guitar sounds on developing minds, using Count Five's hit as their primary test subject. The preliminary results were so alarming that the research team recommended restricting access to the song for anyone under 18 years old. Count Five found themselves at the center of a moral panic that branded them as dangerous to society's youth. Religious groups organized protests outside their concert venues, holding signs that read, "Stop the musical madness," and demanding that venues cancel their performances. The band members, who were barely out of their teens themselves, watched in horror as their moment of success transformed into a public health crisis. Ken Elner later revealed that he received death threats from parents who blamed his guitar playing for their children's behavioral problems, and the psychological pressure of being labeled a threat to young minds caused him to develop severe depression and abandon music entirely just months after their biggest hit. Number 7. Them, Gloria. Van Morrison was only 19 when he recorded Gloria with his band Them in 1964, but the song's raw sexual energy unleashed a controversy that would follow him for decades and destroy his first shot at stardom. The track's repetitive chant of Gloria became an anthem for teenage rebellion, but what most fans didn't know was that Morrison had written the song about a real woman whose obsession with him had turned deadly. Gloria herself was a Belfast socialite who had become fixated on the young musician, and when the song made her famous by name, her dangerous behavior escalated to the point where Morrison feared for his life. The real Gloria had been stalking Morrison since Them's early club performances, showing up at every venue and making increasingly bold attempts to get his attention. When Gloria became a hit across Europe and America, she interpreted the song's success as proof that Morrison was communicating his love for her through the airwaves. She began telling people that she and Morrison were secretly engaged and started appearing at his concerts wearing a wedding dress while screaming his name during performances. The situation became so threatening that Them's management hired security specifically to keep Gloria away from Morrison. But her obsession only intensified as the song's popularity grew. The breaking point came during a 1965 performance in London, when Gloria somehow gained backstage access and cornered Morrison in his dressing room with a knife, demanding that he marry her immediately or face the consequences. Morrison later described the terrifying encounter as the moment he realized his artistic success had created a monster that could destroy his life. After Gloria was arrested and institutionalized, Morrison discovered that she had been keeping detailed diaries about their relationship, filled with violent fantasies about eliminating anyone who tried to keep them apart. The trauma from this experience caused Morrison to develop a paralyzing fear of performing Gloria live, and Them's inability to capitalize on their biggest hit ultimately led to the band's dissolution and Morrison's retreat from the spotlight for several years. Number 8. The Music Machine. Talk Talk. The all-black leather outfits and dark sunglasses that defined the Music Machine's image in 1966 weren't just a fashion statement. They were hiding the physical evidence of a violent internal war that was tearing the band apart from within. Talk Talk climbed the charts with its grinding guitar riff and menacing vocals, but behind the scenes, lead singer Sean Bonniwell had become convinced that his bandmates were plotting to replace him and steal songwriting credits for future hits. His paranoia reached such dangerous levels that he started carrying weapons to recording sessions and threatened to kill anyone who tried to remove him from the group he had created. The toxic atmosphere began affecting their live performances when Bonniwell started using Talk as a platform to send coded messages about his suspicions regarding his bandmates' loyalty. He would change lyrics during concerts to include veiled threats and accusations, turning their biggest hit into a psychological weapon against his own group members. Drummer Keith Olsen later revealed that Bonniwell had installed hidden recording devices in their rehearsal space to capture conversations he believed would prove the conspiracy against him. The other musicians lived in constant fear that their volatile frontman would snap completely and follow through on his increasingly specific threats of violence. The situation exploded during a 1967 recording session when Bonniwell discovered what he claimed was evidence that his bandmates had been meeting secretly with record executives to discuss replacing him. In a rage, he physically attacked guitarist Mark Landon with a microphone stand, leaving him hospitalized with a severe head injury. The assault marked the end of the Music Machine's brief moment of success, as the remaining members fled the band immediately and Bonniwell found himself blacklisted from the industry. Talk had become prophetic in the most twisted way possible. The song about communication breakdown had literally destroyed the group that performed it, proving that sometimes an artist's greatest hit can also become their most devastating curse. Number 9, The Leaves, Hey Joe. 3 years before Jimi Hendrix made Hey Joe legendary, The Leaves recorded the definitive version that should have launched them to superstardom. But their success was sabotaged by a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of the music industry. When their 1966 recording climbed to number 31 on the Billboard Hot 100, The Leaves seemed destined for greatness with their haunting interpretation of the murder ballad that had been circulating through folk circles for years. But powerful forces were already working behind the scenes to ensure that a different artist would receive credit for making the song famous, and The Leaves would be erased from rock history despite creating the template that every future version would follow. The conspiracy began when major record labels realized that Hey Joe had the potential to become a massive crossover hit that could define the emerging psychedelic rock movement. However, The Leaves were signed to a small independent label that lacked the political connections and financial resources to compete with industry giants who wanted to control the song's legacy. Within months of their version's success, executives at major labels were secretly negotiating with Jimi Hendrix's management to record a cover version that would overshadow The Leaves' original breakthrough. The plan was methodically executed, with radio programmers receiving financial incentives to stop playing The Leaves' version and promote Hendrix's upcoming recording instead. The sabotage campaign destroyed The Leaves' momentum just as they were gaining national recognition. Their follow-up singles received virtually no radio airplay, and venues that had been eager to book them suddenly claimed they were no longer available for performances. Lead singer Jim Pons later discovered that industry insiders had been spreading false rumors about the band's reliability and professionalism, effectively blacklisting them from major opportunities. When Hendrix's version of Hey Joe became a massive hit in 1967, The Leaves watched helplessly as their career-defining moment was attributed to another artist, while they were systematically erased from the narrative. The cruel irony was that Hendrix's recording was clearly inspired by The Leaves' arrangement, but the music industry's rewriting of history ensured that the original creators would be forgotten while the cover version became immortal. These songs were supposed to make their creators legends, but instead they became tombstones marking the end of promising careers. From paranormal obsessions to deadly stalkers, from industry conspiracies to violent breakdowns, the dark truth behind 60s one-hit wonders reveals a music business built on manipulation and destruction. The artists who gave us these timeless tracks paid prices that no hit song could ever be worth. And the most chilling part? Many of these same forces are still operating in today's music industry, waiting to claim their next victims. The next time you hear one of these classic hits, remember, you're not just listening to music, you're hearing the sound of dreams being destroyed.